The night Chisom packed her bag, she did not cry. She had already used up every tear she had. 7 years of tears. 7 years of swallowing her own pain so quietly that even the walls of that house stopped feeling sorry for her. She zipped up the bag slowly. She looked around the room one last time. The room that was supposed to be a bedroom. The room that had become a prison cell with a mattress and curtains. She picked up that bag, and she walked out. No note, no goodbye, no explanation. Because she had tried explaining for 7 years, and nobody listened. Not her husband, not his mother, not even her own family. So on that cold December night, with nothing but a bag and the last piece of her dignity, Chisom left. And the moment that door closed behind her, everything changed. For everyone. If this kind of story touches your soul, hit that like button right now. Go ahead and subscribe. This channel is where we tell the stories that real life is too afraid to say out loud. And drop in the comments where you're watching from. Whether you're in Lagos, London, Houston, or somewhere in between. Let us know. We want to hear from you. Now, let's go back to the beginning. Because to understand why Chisom left, you must first understand where Chisom came from. There is a village in Anambra State. Not a big village, not a famous one. Just a small, quiet place where the mornings smell like firewood, and the evenings sound like crickets, and the old women sit outside their compounds and watch the world like they already know how everything will end. That village is called Ogbunike, and in that village there was a family, the Dyke family. Chisom Dyke was born the third child of 5. Her father, Ezena Dyke, was a quiet man, a farmer, not rich, not poor. Just a man who worked the land every morning and came home every evening smelling like soil and sweat and something honest. Her mother, Uloma Dyke, was something else entirely. Uloma was the kind of woman who could carry 10 problems on her head and still walk straight. She sold yam at the market every Saturday. She cooked soup that made the neighbors knock on the wrong door. She prayed every morning before the sun came up and every night after everyone had gone to bed. She was strong, and she made sure her daughters were strong too. Especially Chisom. Chisom was sharp from the very beginning. Even as a small child, she asked questions nobody else had asked. Why does the sky change color at sunset? Why do the old women never eat until the men have finished? Why does Mama always say yes even when her eyes are saying no? Her mother would look at her and laugh. Chisom, you ask too many questions. But Mama, if I don't ask, how will I know? Uloma would shake her head. But secretly, she was proud. She was proud that this daughter of hers was not just going to follow the world. She was going to question it. Chisom grew up. She went to school. She was brilliant. Not in a showing-off way. In a quiet, determined way. The kind of student who sat at the front, not to impress the teacher, but because she genuinely wanted to hear every word. She finished secondary school. She got into university. University of Nigeria in Nsukka. And that was where everything started. Not the pain, not yet. First came the joy. The first time Chisom saw Tobena Ez, she was standing in the queue at the school cafeteria. She was holding a tray. He walked past and then he stopped. He looked at her. She looked at him. He smiled. She looked away. He came back and stood behind her in the queue, even though he had already collected his food.
You left your change,
he said. She turned around. What? He held out a 50 naira note. The woman at the counter. She gave you change. You left it there. Chisom blinked. She checked her pocket. She had not even noticed. Thank you, she said. I'm Tobena, he said. I know how to count my own change, she replied. He laughed. Not a fake laugh, a real one. Like something she said genuinely surprised him. I'm sure you do, he said. I'm Tobena. You already said that. I know. I was hoping you'd say your name back. She looked at him for a long moment. He had warm eyes. That was the first thing she noticed. Not handsome exactly, but warm, like someone who had never learned how to be cold. Chisom, she said, and that was how it started. They became friends first. That was what made it real. They studied together. They argued about politics and history, and whether jollof rice was better with chicken or fish. They walked across campus in the evenings when the heat had settled into something manageable. They shared books. They shared ideas. Stabena was from Owerri. His father was a retired civil servant. His mother was a seamstress who had built a small but loyal clientele in their neighborhood. He was the second of 3 boys. He was studying engineering. She was studying law. Everyone around them said they were too different. An engineer and a lawyer, his friend Kelechi would say, shaking his head. Those two will argue every day of their lives. Good, Tabena would say. I like arguing with her. She always makes sense. Chisom heard that once, and she felt something shift inside her chest, something warm and dangerous. She told herself it was nothing. She told herself this for about 6 months. And then one evening they were sitting outside the library as the sun went down, and Tabena said, "Chisom, I want to tell you something." She said, "Okay." He said, "I think I love you." She did not say anything for a very long time. He waited, because that was the kind of man he was then. A man who could wait, a man who was patient, a man who did not demand anything. Finally, she said, "How do you know?" He said, "Because every time something good happens to me, the first person I want to tell is you. And every time something bad happens, I still want to tell you first. That's how I know." Chisom looked at the sky. The sky was orange and pink and something in between. She said, "I think I love you too." And Tabena smiled. That warm smile, the one she would spend the next decade trying to remember. Trying to find again underneath all the anger and the bitterness and the cruelty that would come later. But that evening, she did not know any of that. That evening, she was just a girl who loved a boy. And everything felt possible. They dated for 3 years. 3 years of laughter and disagreements and making up and growing together. 3 years of meeting each other's families. Chisom's mother, Uloma, liked Tabena immediately. "He has good manners," she told Chisom. "A man with good manners has a good heart." Chisom's father, Ezena, was more careful. "I like him," he said, "but like is not enough. Does he respect you?" "Yes, Papa." "Does he listen when you speak?" "Yes, Papa." "Good, because a man who does not listen to his wife before marriage will not sin after. Watch how he listens." Chisom carried those words carefully. She watched and Tabena listened. He listened to her talk about her cases. He listened to her talk about her fears. He listened to her plans, her dreams, her ideas. He listened even when he disagreed. He listened even when he was tired, and so Chisom felt safe. Tabena's family was another story. His mother, Mrs. Ngozi Eze, but everyone called her Mama Toby, was a small, precise woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. She was not unkind to Chisom, but she was not warm either. She smiled with her mouth, but her eyes were always calculating, always measuring, always finding something that was not quite right. "She's Anambra," Mama Toby said to Tabena once, not thinking Chisom could hear. "Our people marry our people," Tabena said. "Mama, we are all Igbo." Mama Toby made a sound in her throat. That sound that older women make when they have more to say to you but choose to swallow it. For now, Chisom heard. She told herself it was nothing. She was good at telling herself things were nothing. They graduated. Tabena got a job with an engineering firm in Lagos. Chisom completed her law school at the Nigerian Law School in Abuja and returned to Lagos to begin her career. Lagos, the city that chews people up and spits them out and then asks what else you've got. They found a small apartment in Surulere. Not together. Not yet. Tabena lived with 2 of his friends in Yaba. Chisom shared an apartment with a law school colleague in Surulere. But they were close, and they were happy. In the way that young people are happy, when they are building something together, when the struggle itself feels like an adventure, because you're choosing someone to struggle with. And then, 3 years after graduation, Tabena knelt down in the small restaurant in Ikoyi, where they had gone to celebrate Chisom's first big case win. He knelt down, and he brought out a ring. Not an extravagant ring, not the kind you see in movies. A simple, honest ring. Silver, with a small diamond that caught the light just right. He said, "Chisom Dyke, I have watched you work harder than anyone I know. I have watched you refuse to give up. I have watched you become more than even you believed you could be. I want to watch the rest of your life too. Will you let me?" The entire restaurant went quiet. Someone at the table next to them started clapping. Chisom was crying. She did not know when the tears started. "They were just there," she said. "Yes." And the restaurant erupted. And Tabena stood up and held her. And she thought, this is it. This is the man. This is the life. This is everything. They married the following year. The wedding was in Ogbunike, a proper Igbo wedding, 2 days. First, the traditional ceremony, the wine carrying, the dancing, the families, the negotiations, the kola nut, the palm wine, the food that kept appearing like it was coming from nowhere, and then the white wedding. In the church, Chisom's mother danced in a way that made everyone forget there were younger women at the party. Her father watched with wet eyes and said nothing, and said everything. Tobena's family came in their numbers. Mama Toby wore a beautiful George wrapper and a smile that Chisom could not quite read. But it was a good day. It was a beautiful day. Chisom laughed so much her cheeks hurt. And at the end of the night, when it was just her and Tobena sitting outside, tired and happy, and surrounded by the debris of celebration, Tobena held her hand and said, "How do you feel?" she said. "Like something is beginning," he said. "Something is." And she believed him. The first year of marriage was good, not perfect. No first year is perfect. There were small arguments about money, about whose turn it was to do what, about his habit of leaving his shoes by the door and her habit of keeping the bedroom light on when she read late into the night. Small things, normal things, moved into a proper apartment in Bagada. 2 bedrooms, a small kitchen that Chisom slowly made her own, a living room where they would sit on Sunday evenings and watch films and argue about the plots and fall asleep on the couch. It was a real life, a good life. Chisom was growing in her career. She had joined a mid-sized law firm in Lagos Island, and she was doing well, taking on cases, winning most of them, making a name. Tobena was doing well too. His firm had given him a promotion. They were okay. They were more than okay. They were building. And then Mama Toby came to stay. It started as a visit. 2 weeks, Tobena said. "She just wants to spend some time with us. She's getting older. Let her come." Chisom said, "Of course. Because what else do you say? You say, of course. You say welcome, you cook, you smile, you adjust." Mama Toby arrived on a Thursday morning with 2 large bags and a smaller one and something in her eyes that Chisom could not name but had learned to watch. She greeted Tobena warmly. She embraced him and touched his face and said, "My son, you look well. Lagos is treating you well." Then she turned to Chisom. She looked at her, up and down, not rudely, but thoroughly, like she was taking an inventory. "Chisom," she said. "Mama, welcome," Chisom said, reaching to take one of her bags. "Leave it," Mama Toby said. "Tobena will carry it." Chisom stepped back. She told herself it was nothing. 2 weeks became 4. 4 became 2 months. Chisom did not say anything, not at first, because she did not want to be that wife. The one who chases the mother-in-law away. The one who does not respect elders. The one her husband's family would talk about at every gathering for the next 20 years. She did not want to be that woman. So she kept quiet. She kept cooking. She kept cleaning. She kept smiling. But things were happening in that house. Small things. Things that you could explain away individually. But together, added up, they formed something that felt like a pattern, like a plan. Mama Toby had opinions about everything. How Chisom cooked. Tobena likes his soup with more palm oil. He grew up with a certain taste. A wife should know her husband's taste. How Chisom dressed. "You're going out like that?" These Lagos women, always exposing themselves, A married woman should cover herself properly. How Chisom spoke. You talk too much in front of men. A good woman speaks when she is spoken to. It is not your place to lead every conversation. How Chisom spent her money. You're a lawyer now, so you think you can buy things without asking your husband. A man must feel like the head of the house. Otherwise, what is he? At first, Chisom addressed each comment calmly. Mama, I have always cooked this way, and Tabena has never complained. Mama, I dress appropriately for my profession. Mama, Tabena and I have equal finances. But Mama Toby would look at her. That long, quiet look. And then she would turn to Tabena and say something soft, something gentle, something that sounded like nothing, but meant everything. Tabena, your wife has a strong head. Pray she learns to soften. And Tabena would laugh, a nervous laugh, the kind of laugh that is not really a laugh. The kind that says, I heard you, but I don't know what to do with what I heard, so I am going to pretend it was a joke. Chisom noticed. She started to notice a lot of things. There was one evening. Chisom had come back late from work. A case had extended into the evening. She had called Tabena to let him know. She came home. The kitchen was quiet. She went to find her husband. He was in the living room with his mother. They were eating without her, not without waiting for her, without her. Like she was not a part of the meal at all. Like it had not occurred to anyone that perhaps she would be hungry when she returned. She stood in the doorway. Mama Toby looked up. Oh, you're back, she said, not warmly, not unkindly, just blankly. Like Chisom was someone who had just walked into the wrong room. Tabena looked up too, and something crossed his face, something that might have been guilt, or maybe it was just tiredness. He said, there's food in the pot, not let me serve you, not come sit with us, not we were waiting for you in the pot. Chisom looked at her husband. She looked at his mother. She looked at the two of them sitting there eating, in the home she helped to build. She said, okay. She went to the kitchen. She served herself. She ate alone at the kitchen table, and she told herself it was nothing, but something inside her had started counting. The counting began quietly. 1 incident, 2 incidents, 3. Chisom started keeping a kind of record in her head, not on paper. She did not want evidence of her own unhappiness lying around. She kept it in her mind. The times Tabena sided with his mother without hearing Chisom out. The times Mama Toby rearranged things in Chisom's kitchen and then looked at Chisom as though Chisom was the guest. The times Chisom made a decision about her own house, what to buy, how to arrange something, when to invite her own friends, and Tabena would look uncomfortable and say, did you ask Mama? Did you ask Mama? She was asking about her own house, her own life, but she was supposed to ask Mama. And then came the pregnancy question. They had been married for 2 years. Mama Toby called Chisom into the bedroom one afternoon. She sat her down, she folded her hands in her lap, and she said, Chisom, when are you giving Tabena a child? Chisom said, Mama, we are not in a rush. Mama Toby looked at her. You are not in a rush, she repeated slowly. You are a woman. You are not in a rush. Mama, Tabena, and I have discussed this. We want to settle properly first. Financially. Financially, Mama Toby said, like the word tasted wrong. You people of this generation. Everything is financially. Our mothers were having children and working the farm at the same time. Nobody was waiting to be financially comfortable. A woman's first job is to give her husband children, the rest comes after. Chisom kept her voice steady. With respect, Mama, a woman has more than one job. Silence. A long silence. Mama Toby looked at her with those calculating eyes. And then she said very quietly, I hope you are not one of those women who think a career is a substitute for a family. Chisom said nothing. That evening, Tabena came home. His mother was in the kitchen with him, speaking low and fast, and Chisom could not hear everything, but she heard enough. She heard thinks she knows better than everyone. She heard, that kind of wife will not give you peace. She heard Tobena say, "Mama, calm down." But she did not hear him defend her. She did not hear him say, "That is my wife you are speaking about." She did not hear him say, "What Chisom and I decide is between Chisom and me." She heard him say, "Mama, calm down," and that was all. 2 months later, Mama Toby went back to Owerri. The house exhaled. Even the air felt different, lighter. Chisom did not say anything for 2 days. She did not want to say anything while the relief was still so raw and obvious. On the third day, she sat with Tobena in the living room. She said, "Tobena, I want to talk about what happened while your mother was here." Tobena said, "What happened?" She looked at him. "What happened?" she repeated. "Chisom, you know how she is. She's old-fashioned. She doesn't mean half of what she says. She told me my first job is to give you children. She's old. That's what old women believe." "And you? What do you believe?" He paused. A pause that lasted a little too long. "I believe we should have children when we're ready," he said. "Good. And do you think it was okay for her to say the things she said to me? In my own home?" Another pause. "Chisom, she's my mother, and I'm your wife. I know that, do you?" He looked at her. She looked at him. There was something happening between them in that silence. Something important. Something that needed to be resolved right there in that moment. And Tobena looked away. He said, "Let's not fight about this." And he reached for the remote control. And that was the end of the conversation. And that was how it began. Not with shouting, not with a dramatic fight, not with a single terrible event. It began with a man who looked away. The second year blurred into the third. Mama Toby came back to visit twice. Each time the house contracted. Each time some shrank herself to fit the new, smaller version of the space she was allowed to occupy. And each time after Mama Toby left, Tobena was a little different. Not dramatically different, just slightly adjusted. Like a picture that someone had moved half an inch to the left. You might not notice if you weren't looking carefully, but if you lived in that house, if that was your picture on that wall. You noticed. He started asking different questions. "Why do you always get home so late?" She had always gotten home late. Her job had always demanded that. He had never questioned it before. "Why do you spend so much on yourself?" She earned her own money. She always had. She had never been extravagant. She had never been asked to justify her spending before. "Why do your friends come here so often?" Her friends had always come. He had liked her friends. He had eaten their food and laughed at their jokes. Now they were too frequent? She answered his questions, patiently, calmly, because she still believed in communication. She still believed that if she explained clearly enough, if she was patient enough, if she was understanding enough, things would correct themselves. She believed. This the way people believe in things they desperately need to be true. It was the 4th year of marriage when Chisom got pregnant. She discovered it on a Tuesday morning. She was alone in the bathroom with the test. She sat on the edge of the bathtub, and she stared at those 2 lines for a very long time. Her heart was doing something complicated. There was joy in there, real joy. But underneath the joy, there was something else. Something that felt like apprehension, like standing at the edge of something vast and uncertain. She told herself the apprehension was just fear, normal fear. Every first time Mother felt this, she went out. She told Tobena that evening. His face transformed. That was the only word for it. Transformed. The warmth that had been slowly fading from his eyes came rushing back. He held her. He spun her. He laughed like the young man she had fallen in love with in a university cafeteria. He called his mother immediately. Mama Toby's voice on the phone was higher than Chisom had ever heard it. God has done it. I knew it. I knew it. Tobena, my son. A child is coming. A child is coming. And for a brief, shining moment, Chisom felt it. Felt like maybe this the thing that would fix everything. The child. The new beginning. Maybe now things would be different. Things were not different. Mama Toby came back. This time she came with her sister. Auntie Obiagili, a large woman who wore big hats and quoted scripture and had opinions about everything from the way Chisom sat to the direction her bed faced. The bed should face east, Auntie Obiagili announced, walking into Chisom's bedroom without knocking. Chisom was lying down, exhausted from her first trimester. "Excuse me?" Chisom said. "The bed. East. For the child to come out strong, the mother must sleep facing east." Chisom stared at her. "With respect, Auntie, that is not how pregnancy works." Auntie Obiageli looked at her. "You are a lawyer, not a doctor. What do you know about how children come?" Chisom looked at Tabena. Tabena said, "Chisom, we can try it. What's the harm?" She stared at her husband. "What's the harm?" They moved the bed. It was a small thing. It was such a small, stupid, absurd thing. But Chisom lay in that repositioned bed that night, staring at the ceiling, and she understood something. She understood that this was not about a bed. This had never been about any single thing. This was about who had authority in her own life. And quietly, without any fanfare, that authority was being transferred from her to them, and her husband was holding the door open. Her pregnancy was difficult, not medically. Medically, she was fine. The baby was strong and healthy and growing well. But emotionally, Mama Toby and Auntie Bubiagali had an opinion about everything she ate. "You cannot eat pineapple. Do not eat cold water. Stand up more. Walk around. Sitting too much makes the baby lazy. Stop working so hard. You are stressing the baby." That last one particularly, because Chisom had continued working throughout her pregnancy. She was not on bed rest. Her doctor had cleared her to work. She was a lawyer. This was her career. These were her cases. But every morning when she picked up her bag to leave for work, Mama Toby looked at her. Just looked at her. That long, disapproving, sorrowful look. Like Chisom was doing something shameful. Like a pregnant woman going to work was some kind of moral failing. One evening Tobena said it. He had been building up to it. Chisom could feel it gathering in him like a storm. He said, "Chisom, maybe you should take a break from work." She turned from the mirror where she was removing her earrings. "My maternity leave starts in 2 weeks, Tabena." "I know. I mean before that. Take a few weeks now." "Why?" He hesitated. "Mama thinks you're overdoing it. Mama thinks. Mama thinks." Chisom looked at her husband. She said very carefully, "Tobena, I am not sick. I am pregnant. These are not the same thing. My doctor has not told me to stop working. My body has not told me to stop working. The only person telling me to stop working is your mother." He said, "She's concerned. She's controlling." Silence. A terrible silence. Tabena's face shifted. "That is my mother you are speaking about. And this is my body I am defending." They stared at each other. He said, "Chisom, I am asking you as your husband."
"As my husband,"
she said. "You should be standing beside me, not behind her." He did not answer. He walked out of the room. She turned back to the mirror. She looked at herself, her face, her eyes. There was something different in those eyes. Something tired, something that had not been there before. Something that was slowly beginning to understand that the man she married and the man she was living with were beginning to diverge. Their daughter was born in March. They named her Adana, Adana Heze. She came into the world at 4:17 in the morning, small and furious and absolutely perfect. When the nurse placed her in Chisom's arms, something happened that Chisom had not expected. She cried, not a polite emotional cry, a deep body-shaking cry, because this child, this small, warm, squirming child, was real, was hers, was the one thing in that house that nobody could move, reposition, or take authority over. This was hers. Tabena was in the room. He looked at Adana, and his eyes went soft and wet and young again. He reached out and touched her tiny hand. The baby wrapped her fingers around his index finger. And he broke. He cried. And for a moment, just a moment, Chisom remembered why she loved him, why she had chosen him, why she had believed in this. But even in the hospital room, within hours of Adana's birth, Mama Toby arrived. She swept in, she took the baby. She did not ask Chisom. She just took her and began to issue instructions to everyone in the room about what needed to happen next. Chisom was still recovering. She had just pushed a human being out of her body. She was exhausted. She was in pain. She was emotionally exposed in the way that only new mothers understand. And she watched from the bed as Mama Toby held her daughter and spoke as though she was the one who had just given birth. Chisom looked at Tobena. He was watching his mother with Adana. He was smiling. He did not look at Chisom. She lay back on the pillow. She closed her eyes and she felt the first real crack. Not an argument crack, not an irritation crack, a structural crack, the kind that starts in the foundation. She went back to work 3 months after Adana was born. She had taken her full maternity leave. She had been present. She had been a mother. She had breastfed and nursed and held and sung to and worried about and marveled at her daughter every single day. And then she went back to work because it was her career, because it was her life, because she was more than a mother, even though she was a beautiful one. Mama Toby was still in the house. 3 months is too soon, she told Tobena. The baby needs her mother. The baby was with a trained nanny and a grandmother during the day. The baby was not abandoned. But Tobena started to look at Chisom differently. Like maybe his mother had a point. Like maybe Chisom was making the wrong choice. He said it eventually. Adana is a still very young Chisom. Tobena, 3 months is the standard. Many women go back earlier. This is not about what other women do. No, exactly. It's about what I choose to do. With my career, with my life. Your career, he said, like it was a foreign word, like it had stopped being real. Yes, my career, the one I built before I met you, the one I maintained through our marriage, the one I will continue to build. He looked at her. He said, "You've changed," and she said, "I haven't, but your expectations of me have." He left the room. She stayed. She sat with that sentence. She examined it, turned it over, and she realized it was true. His expectations had changed, without any conversation, without any agreement, without any mutual decision. Gradually, quietly, the person he expected her to be had shifted. From the sharp, independent woman he had loved at university to something smaller, something more manageable, something more like what his mother wanted her to be. And the terrifying part was, he did not even seem to realize it was happening. The 5th year of marriage. This was the year things stopped being quiet. This was the year the arguments started coming fast and loud. Chisom had made a decision. She had decided to stop shrinking. She was done apologizing for taking up space in her own life. Done apologizing for her career. Done apologizing for her opinion. Done pretending that Mama Toby's presence in their home was normal. Mama Toby had now been in Lagos for 8 months. 8 months. What was supposed to be a visit had turned into a residency. The woman had not gone home. She had her room in Chisom's house, her cupboard in Chisom's kitchen, her chair in front of Chisom's television. And Tobena saw nothing wrong with this. Chisom sat him down. She said, "Tobena, your mother has been here for 8 months," he said. "She's helping with Adana. Adana has a nanny. I don't need your mother to help with Adana. She's family, Chisom. She is your family. But this is our home, yours and mine. And I am telling you that I am not comfortable." He looked at her. "What are you saying?" "I am saying it respectfully. Your mother is welcome to visit. She is not welcome to live here permanently without any conversation between us." He stood up. He walked to the window. He said, "You want me to send my own mother away. I want us to have boundaries. The way every healthy marriage has boundaries. Where did you learn that? From your Lagos lawyer friends?" Chisom stared at him. "Tobena, no, I want to know. Because the Chisom I married would not be counting the days her mother-in-law spends in her house. The Tobena I married would not allow his mother to disrespect his wife." He turned. "Has she disrespected you?" "Every day," Chisom said, "in ways I have been too patient to explain." "Like what? Give me an example." And Chisom started. She listed calmly, methodically, the way a lawyer lists evidence. Every dismissive comment, every unauthorized rearrangement, every quiet undermining, every moment that Tabena had been in the room and said nothing. Tabena listened, and when she finished, he said, "You've been keeping a list. Someone had to. This is unbelievable." "Which part? That she did these things, or that I remembered them?" "Chisom, these are normal things that—" "Normal," she said. "That word. You keep using that word. Is it normal for a woman to feel like a stranger in her own home? Is that normal, Tabena?" He said nothing, and that silence was its own answer. She asked her mother for advice. Uloma listened. She listened to everything. When Chisom finished, her mother was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Chisom, a tree does not know it's dying until the roots are already gone. Do not wait until the roots are gone." "What do you mean, Mama?" "I mean, a man who does not stand for his wife when it matters will not learn to stand later. He will only learn to find more reasons not to." "So what do I do?" Uloma looked at her daughter. "You have tried talking many times. Has anything changed?" Chisom thought about it. "No." "Then you have your answer." "Mama, I have a child." "You have a child," Uloma said. "Which is exactly why you must not disappear into that house. Your daughter is watching you. She is learning what a woman is from watching you. What do you want her to learn?" Chisom went home with that question sitting heavily in her chest. What do you want her to learn? The 6th year. Tabena's behavior had changed in ways that were no longer subtle. He came home late regularly, not every night, not with obvious lies, but often enough, and with a particular energy when he came home, distracted elsewhere, not fully present. Chisom noticed. She noticed the way wives notice things. Not dramatically, not with accusations, just a quiet, steady noticing, like watching the weather change. She did not confront him immediately. She waited, she watched. One night he forgot to clear his call log the way he usually did. She was not snooping. His phone was on the bed. She picked it up to move it and the screen was open. She saw the name Adadora. 7 calls in 1 week. The most recent that evening, when he had told Chisom he was stuck in traffic. She put the phone down. She sat on the edge of the bed. She breathed. In, out, in, out. She waited for him to come home. He walked in, smelling of the night air, and found her sitting there in the semi-dark. "Chisom, why are you sitting in the dark?" she said. "Who is Adadora?" And the world stopped. She watched his face. She knew how to read faces. She was a lawyer. She had spent years learning how to read what people were not saying with their mouths. What she saw on his face was not confusion. It was caught. He said, "What? Your phone was on the bed. I saw the name 7 calls this week." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "She's a colleague. You've never mentioned a colleague named Adadora." "I don't mention every colleague. You call a colleague 7 times in 1 week? Chisom, while you're supposedly stuck in traffic." He exhaled. He sat down, he said, "You're doing too much, too much." She stared at him. "I'm doing too much," she repeated. "You're making things out of nothing." She said nothing, because she had learned by now that silence from her was louder than any argument. He went to the bathroom. He showered. He came to bed, and he acted like nothing had happened. And the next morning, he acted like nothing had happened. And the morning after that. And Chisom carried the name Adadora in her chest, like a stone she couldn't put down. She needed to know. Not for drama, not for revenge. She needed to know because she could not live with uncertainty. Because certainty, even painful certainty, was better than the slow torture of maybe. She asked her friend Sochi. Sochi was a doctor. Practical, no nonsense. The kind of friend who told you the truth even when you hadn't asked for it. "I need help," Chisom said. Sochi looked at her. "What kind of help?" Chisom told her about the calls, about the behavior, about her suspicion. Sochi was quiet. Then she said, "Do you want to know for sure?" "Yes. Are you ready for what you might find?" A long pause. "I don't know, but I need to find out anyway." Sochi nodded. Okay, she said. Okay. It took 3 weeks, and what Chisom found was not what she expected. She had expected denial. She had expected an affair she could point to, a woman she could name, a betrayal with clear edges. What she found was more complicated. What she found was that Adora was real, a real woman, a real relationship. But it was not just physical. They talked every day. Chisom found out, through a mutual contact, through careful, quiet investigation, that Tabena had been emotionally involved with this woman for over a year. Adaora was younger. She did not have a career that required long hours. She cooked for him. She listened without pushing back. She made him feel like Chisom would later learn, much later, from Tabena's own lips, like the man he wanted to be. Not the man Chisom saw, not the man who could be questioned, not the man who could be held accountable. A simpler man, an uncomplicated man. And what broke Chisom was not the betrayal alone. What broke her was the reason. Because the version of her that he had slowly, quietly, with his mother's help, tried to diminish, that was the version Adaora effortlessly was. Small, accommodating, unchallenging. And she realized what had been happening. Not just the emotional affair, not just Mama Toby, all of it together. The years of being told she was too much, too ambitious, too opinionated, too independent. It was not accidental. It was a conditioning, a slow, deliberate conditioning, to make her into something she was not. And when she refused to be remade, he had found someone who was already that thing. She confronted him, not with screaming, not with theatrics. She sat him down. She laid out what she knew. Everything, calmly, like a closing argument. When she finished, Tabena looked at her, and for the first time in years, the Tabena she remembered appeared. Because he cried real tears. He said, "Chisom, I don't know how it got here," she said. "I know how. I watched it happen." He said, "I love you." She looked at him. She said, "I believe you. And I also believe that love was not enough for you to protect me. Love was not enough for you to stand up to your mother. Love was not enough to make you faithful. So Tabena, what exactly is your love worth?" He had no answer. She did not wait for one. She stood. She walked to the bedroom. She looked at Adana sleeping in her little bed in the room next door. Her baby girl, 4 years old, curled up like a comma, breathing soft and even, and without any knowledge of how her world was about to change. Chisom sat beside her. She did not cry. Not yet. She just sat there, watching her daughter breathe and thinking. She did not leave that night. She stayed for 2 more months. She had to be sure. She was a lawyer. She knew what acting in haste looked like. She knew the cost of decisions made in pain without preparation. So she planned, quietly. She consulted a colleague at her firm, a family lawyer, discreetly. She documented everything she needed to document. She set aside money, carefully, separately. She found an apartment, small but clean, in a neighborhood where Adana could go to school nearby. She arranged everything. And she told no one, not her mother, not Sochi, not anyone. Because she did not want anyone to talk her out of it. Because she had been talked into staying, talked into adjusting, talked into patience, talked into understanding for 7 years. And she was done being talked. Tabena tried to reconcile. He said he would end things with Adaora. He said he would speak to his mother about boundaries. He said he would go to counseling. He said many things. Chisom listened. She watched his eyes. She watched for the warmth she had once loved. It was there, but it was partial. Like a fire that had been burning in a damp room for too long, still present, but diminished and unreliable. She could not build a life on an unreliable fire. She told him this. He said, "Give me a chance," she said. "I have been giving you chances for 7 years. And you have been giving those chances to your mother." He said, "That's not fair." She said, "Fairness is not what I'm looking for anymore, Tabena. I'm looking for safety. And I don't feel safe here. I haven't felt safe in a very long time." He went quiet. She said, "I'm not leaving because I don't love you. I'm leaving because love is not the only thing a person needs to survive a marriage. The night she left, December. Cold for Lagos, which meant a dry, harmattan kind of chill that settled in the bones and made everything feel more serious than it might otherwise. Adana was with her nanny, who had been told nothing. Tobena was asleep. Chisom had not slept. She had spent most of the night sitting by the window, looking out at the city, watching the lights. Lagos at night is a strange thing. It never fully sleeps. There is always something moving. Someone somewhere awake and running and working and surviving. She found it comforting, proof that life continued, even when everything familiar fell away. At 3 a.m, she got up. She went to the wardrobe. She took the bag she had already packed 3 days earlier and kept behind her winter coats. She looked around the bedroom, the room where she had laughed, where she had cried, where she had held her daughter for the first time when they brought her home from the hospital, where she had slowly, night by night, become invisible. She looked at Tobena sleeping. He looked peaceful. He looked like the boy from the cafeteria. She felt something twist in her chest. Grief, real, genuine grief. Not for what she was leaving, but for what she had hoped this could be. For the version of this marriage that had existed in her mind on their wedding day, for the man he might have been, if he had chosen differently. She turned away. She walked to Adana's room. She kissed her daughter's forehead very softly. Adana stirred, made a small sound, settled back into sleep. "I'm not leaving you," Chisom whispered. "I promise. I'm just going first. I'll come back for you." She went to the front door. She opened it. She stepped through. She closed it behind her, and she stood on the other side, and she breathed. The harmattan air filled her lungs, dry and clean and real. And for the first time in years, she was not inside that house. She was outside. She was free, and she started walking. What happened after Chisom left was not what anyone expected. Tobena woke up the next morning and found the bed empty on her side. He thought she had gone to prepare breakfast. He waited. He called out. Nothing. He went to the kitchen. Empty. He checked the bathroom. Empty. He went through every room. And then he opened the wardrobe, and he saw the missing clothes, the missing shoes, the particular bag she used for overnight travel, gone. He called her phone. She answered on the 3rd ring. She said, "Tobena." He said, "Chisom, where are you?" She said, "I've left." A long silence. "What?" "I've left the house, Tobena. I'm okay. Adana is with Nkechi. I will be in contact about Adana's arrangements. I have spoken to a lawyer. Please do not make this difficult," he said. "Come home. We can talk." She said, "We have talked for 7 years. I'm done talking. I need to live now." And she ended the call. Tobena stood in the middle of the living room. He was holding the phone. He was staring at nothing, and for the first time, for the very first time, he felt the weight of everything he had not done. All the moments he had chosen his mother's peace over his wife's dignity. All the times he had laughed off what he should have addressed. All the times he had expected Chisom to carry what he refused to lift. All of it fell on him now, at once, in the living room of a house that suddenly felt enormous and empty. He called his mother. He told her what had happened. Mama Toby said, "Let her go. If she wants to leave, let her go. She was always too proud. A woman like that cannot be a good wife." He hung up. Something cracked in him. Not the foundation crack that had happened to Chisom years ago. This was the roof. This was the whole structure. Because he heard his mother's voice, and for the first time, truly for the first time, he heard what Chisom had been hearing for 7 years. He heard the dismissal. He heard the judgment. He heard the cruelty dressed as wisdom. He heard it, and he understood. Too late. He understood too late. He tried to reach Chisom. She was consistent. She communicated about Adana, about pickups, about drop-offs, about school, about medical appointments. She was clear. She was fair. She was professional. Like a woman who had spent years preparing to be exactly this. He came to the apartment she had rented. He stood outside. He called. She came down. She stood in the doorway of the building. She looked at him. He said, "Chisom, please." She said, "Tobena, I made a decision. I need you to respect it." He said, "I love you." She said, "I know. But that's not the question anymore." He said, "What is the question?" She said, "The question is, who were you when it mattered? And neither of us can change the answer to that." She went back inside. He stood there for a long time. Then he got in his car and he drove. 6 months after Chisom left, Tobena's firm offered him a transfer. Port Harcourt. He took it. Mama Toby moved back to Owerri permanently. The Lagos apartment was sold. Everything unraveled quickly once it started. Chisom stayed in Lagos. She threw herself into her work. She became. That was the word she used later, when she spoke about that period of her life. She became. She became more fully herself than she had been in years. She was a good mother to Adana. She was present. She was loving. She was fierce on her daughter's behalf. She built a new kind of life, quieter than she expected, but real, deeply, solidly real. 3 years passed. Adana was 7. Chisom was 35. She had been made a partner at her law firm. She had her own apartment now, bigger than the first one, with a room that she had decorated specifically the way she wanted, and a kitchen that no one rearranged, and a morning routine that was entirely her own. She had friends. She had her mother visiting regularly. Her father, older now, sometimes came to Lagos and sat in her living room and watched the city from her window and said, "You did right, Chisom. You did right." She did not have a romantic relationship. She was not ready. Or perhaps more accurately, she was not rushing. She had learned the cost of rushing. She was learning to let things come in their time. And then the call came. Not from Tobena, from Tobena's younger brother, Chisom, a quiet young man, a doctor in Abuja. The one member of Tobena's family who had always been kind to Chisom, without agenda. He called her on a Wednesday morning. She was in the office. She stepped out into the corridor. "Chisom, is everything okay?" Chisom. His voice was careful, like he was carrying something breakable. "I need to tell you something about Tobena." She waited. "He's in the hospital. He had a cardiac episode 3 nights ago. He's stable now." But a pause. "It was serious, Chisom." She was quiet for a moment. "Is he going to be okay?" "The doctors think so, but it scared us." It scared him most of all. Another pause. "I'm calling because he asked me to call you." Chisom leaned against the wall. "He asked you to call me?" "Yes." She did not say anything for a long time. "Thank you for telling me, Chisom. I'm glad he's stable. He wants to see you, Chisom. I know. Will you come?" A long, long pause. "I'll think about it." She thought about it for 4 days. She talked to her mother. Uloma said, "Is he your enemy?" "No." "Then go. Not for him. Go for yourself. Go so that whatever is unfinished between you can be put down properly." She talked to Sochi. Sochi said, "Chisom, you have carried this long enough. Go and put it down." She talked to Adana. Adana was 7, old enough to understand some things. "Mama, can I come see Daddy?" Chisom looked at her daughter. "Do you want to?" "Yes, I miss him." Children are direct in ways that adults forget to be. She booked 2 flights to Port Harcourt. The hospital room was quieter than she expected. Tobena was propped against pillows. He had lost weight. His face was thinner, his eyes were older. When he saw her, something happened in his face. Not joy exactly. Something more complicated than joy. Relief, perhaps. The relief of seeing someone who knows your whole story. Adana ran to him. He held his daughter. He held her for a long time. His eyes closed. His whole body relaxed, like something that had been clenched for years finally let go. When he opened his eyes, they were wet. He looked at Chisom over Adana's head. He said, "Thank you for coming." She said, "How are you feeling?" "Better than I was." A small pause. "Chisom, I have been thinking. Lying here thinking. Tobena, you don't have to. Let me," he said. "Please, I have needed to say this for a long time." She sat. She waited. He said, "I did not protect you. I know that now." I think I knew it then too, if I'm honest. But I chose comfort. I chose the peace of not fighting my mother over the peace of your heart, and I lost you because of it. I lost the best thing that ever chose me. The room was very quiet. Adana had fallen asleep against his arm. He looked at her. He said, "She looks like you. She acts like you," Chisom said. He smiled. A small, sad, real smile, he said. "I'm sorry, Chisom. I know sorry is not enough. I know it doesn't give back the years. I know it doesn't fix what I broke. But I need you to know that I know what I did, what I didn't do. I know." She looked at him, this man. This complicated, flawed, afraid man who had once looked at her in a university cafeteria and decided she was worth knowing. She felt something shift. Not forgiveness exactly. Not yet. But the beginning of it. The loosening, she said, "Tobena, I don't hate you. That I was angry for a long time. I grieved for a long time. But I don't hate you." He nodded. He could not speak for a moment. Then he said, "That means more than you know," she said. "Focus on getting better. Adana needs her father well." He looked at his daughter sleeping against his arm. He said, "And what about you? Are you okay?" She thought about the question, the real full answer to it. "I'm becoming okay," she said. Slowly, "I'm becoming okay." And she meant it. She and Adana stayed in Port Harcourt for 3 days, not with Tobena, in a hotel nearby. She brought Adana to the hospital each day. She watched her daughter give her father drawings she had done on hotel notepad paper. She watched him receive them like they were sacred. She watched him soften. She watched what grief and illness and time had done to the man she had once loved completely. And she found, to her surprise, that she did not feel triumph. She had thought she might. She had thought that after everything, after all the pain, that seeing him diminished would feel like justice. It did not feel like justice. It felt like sadness. Not for her, for all of it. For the marriage that could have been something else. For the years that went into the wrong things. For the version of Tobena that had been slowly replaced by a smaller, more afraid version. For his mother, who had believed she was protecting her son, but had only helped him destroy the best thing he had. For all of it. The last evening, Tobena asked her one more question. He said, "Chisom, do you think we could have made it different?" She thought about it honestly. She said, "Yes, I think we could have made it." He closed his eyes. He said, "I think so too," she said. "But we are what we actually did, not what we could have done." He opened his eyes. "That's the hardest thing you've ever said to me. It's the truest." A pause. He said, "Is there any possibility?" She looked at him for a long moment. She said, "Tobena, I love who you are in this hospital room. I love the man who is lying here honest and sorry, and finally clear. But I have also watched you become someone else under pressure. And I cannot trust that this version will stay when the pressure returns." He said nothing. She said, "What I can give you is this. I will raise Adana with you. I will not keep her from you. I will not speak against you to her. You will be her father, and I will make sure she knows that fully. That is what I can give." He said, "That's more than I deserve," she said. "Maybe, but it's what Adana deserves." She flew back to Lagos. Adana slept against her shoulder on the plane. The city spread out below them as they descended. All those lights, all that life, all those people in all those houses, in all those marriages, in all those stories. She thought about her mother, her father. She thought about the kitchen in Ogbunike that smelled like firewood. She thought about a girl who asked too many questions. She thought about a cafeteria queue and a 50 naira note. She thought about a wedding in a village where her mother danced like no one else existed. She thought about a bedroom repositioned to face east. She thought about a door she had once closed behind her and never opened the same way again. And she thought, I did not leave because I stopped loving him. I left because I started remembering myself, and I could not forget myself again. Not for anyone, not even for love, Chisom became one of the leading family lawyers in Lagos in the years that followed. She took cases that involved women who had been where she had been. Women who had been slowly unmade by marriages that looked fine from the outside. Women who had been told to be smaller than they were. Women who had stayed too long and left too late. She took their cases. Not always for money. Sometimes for nothing but the chance to stand in a room and say, "This woman has rights. This woman has a story. This woman is not finished." She became known for it. People called her fierce. People called her fearless. But the truth, the real truth, was simpler than that. She was just a woman who had learned the cost of silence and decided the price was too high. Tobena recovered. He moved back to Owerri, eventually, closer to his family, closer to a life that fit the person he actually was. He and Chisom built something new, not a marriage, a partnership in raising their daughter. It was not easy in the beginning, but it became easier. The way things become easier when people stop pretending. He called Chisom one afternoon, 2 years after the hospital. He said, "I need to tell you something." She said, "Okay." He said, "I went to see a therapist. I've been going for 8 months." She said nothing. He said, "I understand things now that I should have understood before, about boundaries, about what I allowed, about who I chose to protect and who I should have chosen." She said, "Tobena, I'm not asking for anything," he said quickly. I wanted you to know that I did the work. Even though it's too late, I did the work." She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "It's not too late to be a better man. It's only too late to be my husband." He said, "I know." She said, "I'm proud of you for doing the work." He said, "Thank you, Chisom, for everything." She said, "Take care of yourself," he said. "You too." And they hung up. And Chisom sat at her desk for a moment, and she felt it, the full weight of everything, and the lightness underneath it, the lightness of a life she had chosen, the lightness of a woman who had walked out of a cage and kept walking, all the way back to herself. On Adana's 10th birthday, Chisom threw a party, a big, noisy, colorful party with too much food and too many children and music that spilled out into the street. Tobena came. He sat with Chisom's father. The two men spoke quietly in the corner for a long time. At one point, Chisom watched her father say something, and Tobena nodded and put his head down. She did not know what was said. She did not need to. Adana ran through the party like a small hurricane. She danced. She laughed. She grabbed her father's hand, and then her mother's hand, and pulled them both toward the dance floor with the fearless certainty of a child who has never had to choose sides. And for a moment, just a moment, the three of them stood there together, not as a family in the way they had been, but as people. 3 people who shared the most important thing in the world, a child, a future, and the willingness to try. That night, after everyone had gone, after Adana was asleep, Chisom sat outside on her balcony. The Lagos night spread out around her, warm, alive, indifferent in the way cities are always indifferent. She thought about something her grandmother used to say. Her grandmother who had died when Chisom was 9, who had sat on a wooden stools outside her compound in Ogbunike every evening and watched the world with ancient, amused eyes. She used to say, "My daughter, a cage is only a cage if you stay in it. The door is always there. The question is only whether you are brave enough to open it." Chisom had thought she understood that as a child. She understood it better now. Not every door is dramatic. Not every escape is loud. Some women leave in the middle of the night. Some women leave in the middle of a sentence. Some women leave by simply deciding. By deciding that they are more than what the world has reduced them to. By deciding that love is not a reason to disappear. By deciding that the person they were before the marriage has not died. She is just waiting. Patient and quiet and still very much alive. Waiting for you to come back. Chisom looked at the city. She was 37 years old. She had a daughter who was fierce and bright and full of questions. She had a career that meant something. She had a mother who still danced. She had a father who called every Sunday. She had a life. Not a perfect life. Not the life she had imagined in the restaurant in Ikoyi, when a man knelt and offered her a simple silver ring. But a real life, a chosen life, a life that fit, and she was grateful. Not for the pain. No one should be grateful for pain, but for the surviving of it, for the fact that she had been broken and had not become broken, that she had been silenced and had found her voice again, that she had walked out of a house that had become a cage and had never stopped walking until she found something worth standing in, herself. And this is the thing about cages. They are not always made of iron. Sometimes they are made of silence, of the moments when you do not speak up, when you do not stand up, when you do not name the thing that is happening to you. Sometimes a cage is built word by word, one small dismissal at a time, one expectation adjusted, then another, until one day you look around, and the space you are allowed to occupy has become so small that you have forgotten who you were before you fit yourself into it. And the person who built the cage did not always know they were building it. That is the hardest truth. Some people imprison others not from cruelty, but from their own fear, from their own smallness, from what they were taught love looks like. And they genuinely do not see the bars. So what do? You do Chisom. Did you speak? As many times as you have to. You give every reasonable chance. You try with everything you have. And then, if nothing changes, if the cage only gets smaller, you remember that you were a person before you were a spouse. That your children need to see you whole, not hollowed. That love without dignity is not love. It is just endurance. And endurance alone is not a life. Leave when you must, not in anger, not in revenge, in peace, with your head up, with your bag packed by your own hands, and the door closed on you quiet and final. Not as a defeat, as a declaration. I am still here. I am still me, and no house, no matter how much I love the person in it, will take that from me. Chisom Dyke, 37 years old, sitting on her balcony, watching Lagos, free, and somewhere in Ogbunike, in a house that smells like firewood, an old woman's spirit smiles because her granddaughter finally understood. A cage is only a cage if you stay in it. The door is always there. If Chisom's story touched something in you, if you've ever felt yourself shrinking in a space that was supposed to feel like home, if you've ever loved someone so much that you almost lost yourself in the loving, then you already know this channel is for you. We don't tell these stories for entertainment alone. We tell them because somewhere out there is a woman holding on just a little longer than she should. There is a man beginning to see what his silence has cost him. There is a young person watching their parents and learning what love is supposed to look like. And maybe, just maybe, hearing Chum's story gives them permission. Permission to speak, permission to leave, permission to become. If this story moved you, I need you to do 3 things right now. First, hit that like button, not for the algorithm, because you felt something real today. And real things deserve to be honored. Second, subscribe, because we have more stories. Stories that will shake you and heal you, and remind you who you were before the world started reshaping you. Stories told in the way only our African grandparents knew how, with bone-deep truth and no apology. Subscribe, and you won't miss a single one. Third, tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Lagos, Abuja, London, Houston, Johannesburg, Toronto, wherever you are, we want to know. This community is everywhere, and it is built on one simple thing, the belief that stories told honestly can save lives. We'll see you in the next one. And until then, remember Chisom. Remember that she packed that bag. She closed that door and she kept walking. You can too.